This is Chuck Schaefer, and today I'm joined by Ryan Donovan. Ryan is a certified payroll professional and certified professional in human resources, has achieved an MBA and master's degree in HR, and has been an HR and HCM practitioner and analyst for about a decade. Today we're going to tap into Ryan's experience and expertise with professional employer organizations, or PEOs. The purpose of our conversation today is to explore what types of organizations may be best served by PEOs, or what those organizations should consider if and when moving to a PEO in order to maximize their value and payback. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you for joining me. How are you today?
I'm good.
Excellent. Ryan, let me start off by asking what types of organizations are good candidates to enter a PEO relationship with a service provider? Or maybe put another way, what types of organizations may be the best candidates to benefit from a PEO provider?
Well, typically, you're going to be looking at smaller companies that join PEOs, mostly because smaller companies don't have the resources to pour into software, compliance, legal counsel, what have you. So a PEO is a good way to get pretty much all of that for a low singular cost. It's mostly for people in general, whether they be smaller or medium-sized companies that don't need complex or customized software. They don't want or require the command and control that a non-PEO situation would have if a company wants to command and control its own behaviors and wants to be involved in that, then a PEO is not for them. But if they wish to offload that so they can focus on their business, then that would be a major reason to join a PEO. And like I said, it's mostly for companies that either don't want to deal with the administrations themselves or they can't afford it.
Okay. For organizations considering a move to a PEO, how should they go about organizing their PEO selection process?
First thing that any company that's considering a PEO or knows that they want to do a PEO should do is establish what they need from a minimum software and level of service standpoint, benefits, what have you. They need to know the minimum benchmarks, the minimum standards of the service that they are looking for. If you don't have that figured out, you're not going to be able to effectively shop and tell companies this is what we need, and forcing those prospective companies, PEO companies, to tell you up front, no, we can't do this, or yes, we can do this. In terms of what providers to look at, there's national providers, that you've probably heard of that do it, and there's also regional players that operate mostly in geographical areas or just a few geographical areas rather than nationally. And if you have a very localized employee base, then that's actually not a bad option. But basically, you just need to make sure that you know what you're willing to spend, what you need in terms of benefits, in terms of service, in terms of legal advice, what have you, and what all those companies have to offer.
What do you think are the most common business objectives for companies moving to a professional employer organization?
Well, one major thing is compliance, especially with the recession and agencies, unemployment agencies, discrimination agencies like the EEOC have been ramped up their enforcement and regulations. For example, the EEOC just came out with a regulation involving people with criminal histories. Just incremental things like that can have a big effect on how you hire people, fire people, administer existing hires. So to have a company that is on the forefront of keeping up with that is a big plus that a lot of PEO seekers or a lot of payroll seeking people look into. Another major reason why PEO would be a big plus for people is that they want to focus on running their business. They don't have, you have a very small base of management. You got people wearing a lot of hats. They don't want to be bogged down with stuff that does not help grow their business. I mean, if you're spending all day answering questions about how much paid time off you have and your benefits and all that, if you can offload that to a third party and allow you to spend more time on running the business, then that is a huge plus, especially for businesses that are smaller. And the other major reason is that PEO is a complete solution as compared to a a provider that just basically gives you a conduit to run payroll, and that's about it.
Good points. When implementing with a new PEO provider, what are the critical success factors to make the implementation as timely and pain-free as possible?
Well, you shouldn't rush into it. You need to be organized. You need to have all the information collected. I mean, when you're talking about risk, workers' comp, when you're talking about benefits, when you're talking about human resources, if you don't have all that collected and in a repository where you can disseminate it to your new provider, that's going to cause problems. And in general, you need to do whatever you can to make the transition as seamless as possible, as transparent to your employees as possible. You don't want it to be obvious that you're changing providers based on the fact that there's a lot of problems.
What are the most common or significant potential pitfalls that can delay or reduce the effectiveness of a PEO program?
Well, one major thing is that some employers perhaps don't realize what a PEO is, what it entails, what it calls for. Typically, when you enter a PEO relationship, you have to sign a contract. It's called different things, but it's basically a contract explaining what the PEO is going to do or is supposed to do, what the employer is supposed to do and needs to do, what the employer is not supposed to be doing as it relates to paying people outside of the PEO relationship, anything like that, just little things like that. So, when you're entering the relationship, you need to understand that a lot of the overhead and a lot of the processes that would normally be handled by internally are going to be, at least in part, be handled by the PEO. And if you are seeking a situation, a relationship where you're not having to worry about what a third party might think of what you're doing, the PEO is probably not what you're into. But if you're trying to seek out a collaborative relationship for compliance and solution benefit purposes, then it obviously would be better. So make sure you read the term of the contract and understand that the PEO is the employer of record. They're the ones that are named on the W-2s and all that, for example. So, they have some liability concerns as well. So you need to understand that and companies need to understand that it's a partnership. And if the PEO feels that you're straying from that too far, then they will act.
Ryan, how long do customers generally stay with PEO providers, and what are the most common reasons they eventually leave these programs?
It's typically 1 to 3 years. A lot of the time it's typically not a long relationship. And as far as why it changes, they are either transitioning from a PEO provider to a non-PEO provider because they decided a PEO is not for them. They're not willing to abide by the terms of the contract, as I stated earlier, in terms of what they're allowed to do, not allowed to do, activities that make the PEO susceptible to liability, like not paying employees on time, stuff like that. So generally it's a solution company misalignment a lot of the time, or perhaps it's service concerns, but generally it has more to do with compliance with the contract and what being in a PEO truly means more than anything.
Very good points. Ryan, is there any other advice you might offer to a company considering a move to a professional employer organization?
If you're going to make a change, if at all possible, do it at the end of your fiscal or the end of the year. It's not something you probably, it's not something you probably want to do in the middle of the year because it can create hassles in terms of benefits and employees getting more than one W-2 and just little things like that just annoy employees. Bear in mind that money should not be your only consideration. There is the principle that you get what you pay for. So just because a PEO is offering you the best deal doesn't mean they're the best deal for you in terms of service, and that does matter when you're talking about things like benefits, especially in today's political climate.
Thank you, Ryan. And with that, I think we're at a good break point to conclude our conversation. This is Chuck Schaefer of HCM.TV, and today I've been joined by Ryan Donovan. Ryan, I think your points and advice for organizations considering a move to a PEO are very helpful. Thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.